Is the Google Pixel turning into just an iPhone tribute act? I've spent just over a month with the Pixel 9 Pro XL, Google's biggest and most advanced smartphone for 2024. It's got some of the best camera features in any phone I've ever used, plus some genuinely useful AI tricks, and the best Pixel battery life ever. And yet, in some other areas like the design, it's tough for me not to feel like Google has just kinda given up and decided to go with the flow. So let's dig into where I am with the Pixel 9 Pro XL 1 month on from launch, and whether it even matters that the Pixel might be becoming just a Google-flavored iPhone. I'm Alex Dobie, this is XDA, let's jump in. So to start off with, as much as I spent the first 30 seconds or so of this video kind of ragging on this phone's design, the 9 Pro XL here is an attractive piece of hardware. I've got this porcelain version here, which with its bright white back panel and polished, almost white gold looking trim, is eye-catching but not overly ostentatious. Size-wise, it fits in pretty much between the iPhone 15 Pro Max and 16 Pro Max, though we are dealing with very small differences in dimensions here, so I guess it's safe to say this just falls into big-ass phone territory. And the particular quirks of this design, as you'll know if you've held a recent Pro Max iPhone, means it's undeniably harder to hold onto with one hand than any previous Pixel. I challenge anyone to hold this next to say a Pixel 6 Pro or 8 Pro and say the newer phone is more ergonomic. It's just not. I guess at least the smaller Pro Pixel does exist this year, packing the same specs into a more manageable footprint. The screen borders are slightly thicker than both the 15 and 16 Pro Max, for whatever that's worth. Not a huge deal in my opinion. I'm not the kind to get too bent up about a couple tenths of a millimeter here or there. Similar deal with the outer frame. It's slightly more rounded than any of Apple's recent Pro phones, and of course uses aluminium, not titanium. And Google's frame protrudes just a little further out around the edges than Apple's, though what I will say is that the polished finish is more appealing to me than the varying levels of matte finish offered by the iPhone. So you see, it's kind of hard not to look at this design through the lens of Apple's recent handsets, especially around the front. That's a tough contest for Google to walk right into because after many generations, Apple is really good at making phones that look like this. But iPhone aside, what else is there to talk about around the front? Well, Google's included yet another excellent display in its flagship phone this year. Building on the brilliant panel of the 8 Pro, this second-gen Actua display offers even higher peak brightness levels than before, while maintaining excellent color accuracy and eye-popping HDR performance. And there's an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner now too, provided by Qualcomm, which is faster than the previous optical sensor while also not needing to emit any light to function, meaning it's less distracting in the dark. Around the back is where this new Pixel design really shines, I think. It's still got that iconic camera bar, but in a cleaner form without any visible joints, and with a perfect proportion around the lens and camera housing. It's still instantly recognizable as a Pixel in a way that no other Android phone really manages, while looking sharp in its own individual way. Internally, this is a Pixel, so you know it's going to run a Google Tensor chip that's mainly designed to accelerate its many Google-powered AI tricks, but probably not excel at benchmarks and very demanding games. That's true of the Tensor G4 just as much as it has been any other previous generation of Tensor. This phone can't match the latest Snapdragon or Apple Silicon in raw performance. Casual gaming is perfectly fine, but don't expect the best frame rates in Genshin Impact. To be honest, if you were considering a Pixel, chances are you already knew this. However, where I have been extremely impressed this year is with the Pixel 9 Pro XL's battery longevity. I would say for the way I use phones, this phone pretty much is up there with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 or Gen 3 equivalent in terms of battery life, which means it's an easy full day of heavy use or getting into a second day if you're not using the device all that much. Just as noticeable for me, besides the lack of battery drain that we have seen from many previous Tensors, is the way that shooting lots of photos or video, especially making heavy use of 5G data, doesn't seem to punish the battery quite as much as previous Pixels. Now granted, the Pixel 8 Pro wasn't too bad on cellular data, but I think the new Samsung modem in the Tensor G4 makes a big difference even beyond the performance of that model, with noticeably less heat even when I was using this thing in Berlin recently in temperatures in the mid-30s Celsius. Combine this with reasonably quick but not exceptional wide charging speeds of up to 37 watts and you've got pretty reliable longevity here, even if wireless charging speeds are still nothing to write home about. So the Pixel 9 Pro XL is launching on Android 14, which just seems like bizarro world stuff for someone like me who remembers when Pixels and previously Nexus phones were all about experiencing a new version of Android first. But that's not such a big deal this time around, because really all the software stuff that matters in this phone has to do with AI and that Google services layer that lives on top of the core OS. The Pixel AI magic can work just as well on Android 14 as it does on Android 15. With that said, I found the AI features in this phone to be kind of a mixed bag. The ones I'm most enthusiastic about, as is usual with the Pixel, have to do with the camera experience, and we'll get to most of that later in this review. But the best example of AI here that's just kind of there for the sake of it is this AI-generated weather summary in the Weather app, taking an extra couple of seconds to load and adding basically nothing that your human brain couldn't pass by glancing down at the actual forecast. Pixel Studio is Google's AI image generator, and it's fine, I guess. Google has quickly patched out much of the more offensive content that reviewers were able to generate pre-launch, but at the same time patching out the ability to generate humans of any kind, even if they're not the central subject of the image. There's plenty of whimsical, fun stuff that you can create, but it still feels quite limited compared to what the likes of OpenAI and Adobe can do. Google's Gemini AI agent replaces the old Google Assistant by default on the Pixel, and it works well enough with the usual caveats that apply to all generative AIs at the moment. Gemini, and especially Gemini Live, can be helpful and creative, but the other side of that coin is it can make mistakes more often than the old Google Assistant. So it can be quite creative in rewriting your resume in the style of a pirate or coming up with a new poem or sonnet, just don't ask it how many R's there are in the word strawberry. So yeah, Gemini Live is a more advanced version of Gemini in which the assistant can talk to you in a free-flowing conversation. You're able to interrupt the assistant and it can respond with new context. It can be quite intelligent, but also it's not exclusive to Pixel 9 phones. You can download and install it on any Android device. Meanwhile, Pixel Screenshots is another one of these almost useful features. It's Google's take on a Microsoft Recall style tool for capturing your important info and making it queryable later in a Screenshots app. It could be helpful for certain tasks, I guess, kind of like an AI scrapbook for planning a trip. But again, you're left having to double check the accuracy of any important details, which diminishes its usefulness. But where the Pixel 9's AI really nails it is in photography and photo editing. Building on earlier features like the Magic Editor, the Pixel 9 debuts new additions like Zoom Enhance, which actually was originally announced way back on the Pixel 8 Pro in 2023. Nevertheless, it is here now, and when it works just right, it can seem magical, using generative AI to infer additional bits of detail that might be in your images if you were to zoom in further. Again, it doesn't always get it right because it's inferring what should be there when it doesn't actually know, so details of buildings, text, or other artificial things may get a bit mangled, but people, animals, and landscapes, for example, produce much more impressive results. Reimagine adds a touch of AI to your photo editing based on your own prompt for subtle changes or alternatively ridiculous cryptid additions to your photos. Some folks have voiced concerns this makes photos from Pixels inherently less believable somehow, but really in my view this is just a democratization of the many photo editing capabilities that have been available professionally for some time already. Besides which, in our current age of what is a photo existential hand-wringing, I do appreciate how all of these are separate features you can use later as opposed to being something Google's tied directly into the camera app. There's a clear separation between the stuff that's actually there and what is an AI-generated illusion. Where those lines do start to blur slightly is in the Add Me feature, which you can use to add yourself into photos you've taken of friends or family by intelligently stitching two images together that were taken in quick succession. This does take more time and effort than simply handing your phone to a third person, and it's definitely possible to mess up the framing or scale when you're taking that second shot. But let's face it, it's also less risky and a very impressive demonstration of computational photography on the Pixel. So what else is new camera-wise on the 9 Pro XL? Well, the hardware itself is very similar to that of the 8 Pro last year, not a bad thing at all, though with the more powerful Tensor chip now bringing AI to the entire processing pipeline. The most visible hardware difference you'll actually see is the new front camera with a new higher res and wider 42 megapixel front facer that's easily among the best I've used for still photos, whether in portrait mode or not. There's also a retooled panorama mode, which I appreciate since this mode really has been neglected over the past 5 years or so of Pixel phones. Like the old photosphere mode, it captures panoramas in chunks as opposed to a single smooth motion. And because these panoramas now use the same HDR+ processing as other Pixel photos, nighttime performance is significantly better than most other high-end phones. Over on the video side, the cloud-based Video Boost is by far the most important feature that sets Google's Pro Pixels apart from the competition, even the iPhone, which packs its own set of unique videographic capabilities. Video Boost can smooth out motion in shots, as we've already seen from the earlier version of this feature on the Pixel 8 Pro, and now AI upscaling it up to 8K resolution is supported too. Probably you're not going to be viewing this footage back on an 8K display, but even so, the extra detail you get from an 8K upscale is going to help you out if you're using this footage in any kind of professional setting or in content creation. Night sight for video is also super impressive. It's not quite a magic bullet for low light video, but it applies the same principles as the still photo night sight mode to reduce noise in footage without scrubbing away fine detail, and also eliminating the unpleasant jelly effect that you get in moving nighttime footage from just about any other smartphone video camera. Overall, I'm a big fan, especially now that Video Boost is supported on the 5x telephoto as well as the primary camera. You can get some really impressive footage by combining these two features. The other side of the Video Boost equation is that it's still a cloud-based feature. You need to upload your clips to Google Photos and wait for them to be processed before you see the benefits. Obviously, the endpoint Google is surely working towards is having Video Boost run locally on the Tensor SoC, but we're not quite there yet. Processing times, I've noticed, are quicker than they were when the first version of Video Boost launched in 2023, but it's still far from instant. And actually working with the processed video files when they're available can be problematic too. Some Video Boost clips are served up encoded with the AV1 codec, which isn't widely supported in as many apps, including creator staples like Premiere Pro. Converting to H.264 or H.265 is possible on device, but the process to do so is pretty clunky, requiring you to download manually first, then look for the export option. So yeah, a really great feature overall, just kinda clunky implementation in some places. As for general photo quality across the three main lenses, the Pixel 9 Pro XL continues the series' pedigree of consistent, reliable excellence across a wide variety of scenarios and lighting conditions. The bump up to an f/1.7 aperture for the ultra-wide is probably the biggest hardware difference around the back compared to this phone's immediate predecessor, making for a more versatile performance in darker conditions with this camera. The telephoto isn't quite as sharp at longer zoom levels as Samsung's S24 Ultra, but Google still puts in a fantastic performance here, especially in the 5 to 10 times zoom range. And particularly in low light, where it's able to use its computational magic to produce very clean looking telephoto images. Being a Pro Pixel, you also get Google's Pro Camera controls. This extra layer of photo shooting options can be a little overwhelming at first, but I've really appreciated the extra control that you get that's lacking from other phone cameras, like the ability to selectively raise or lower shadows and highlights in some shots. It's great for example, balancing out the shadows in very backlit shots like this. So if you couldn't tell, I am still a big fan of this Google camera system. The Pixel camera still doesn't have the biggest sensors overall, but a couple of key hardware upgrades, the new selfie camera and a brighter aperture for that ultra-wide, make a big difference in addition to the incremental improvements in image processing. So the physical design of this phone may make it seem like just an iPhone tribute act, especially when viewed from the front. But the reasons to buy it are quite different to the things that appeal to me about the iPhone. And for me, that's primarily the Pixel photo and video experience. It feels like the more things change with the Pixel, the more the reasons you might actually want to buy one stay the same. This year in particular, the video improvements that Video Boost brings to the equation is a huge part of that. This feature now feels more or less fully baked in a way that it wasn't in 2023. And elsewhere, new AI photo editing features build on an area of historic strength for Google going all the way back to the Pixel 6. As for some of the other AI features, I can kinda take or leave them. For me personally, call transcription and note-taking isn't massively useful. I'm not making that many voice calls that it's a big deal for me personally. Pixel Studio doesn't do anything that countless AI image generators aren't already doing, and the overall offering is weaker than its OpenAI rival. And Gemini is showing more promise as Google continues to build it out, but that's an Android feature, not a Pixel exclusive. And obviously, if high-end gaming is a big priority for you in a smartphone, neither this nor any other Pixel is going to be the best choice. Google's also asking for a lot of money for this phone, especially when you consider the base model 9 Pro XL still comes with just 128 gigs of storage. With that in mind, I definitely recommend upping to 256 if you're planning to use this phone long term. But that does bring the starting price up to a hefty $1199 in the US. That's iPhone 16 Pro Max money. But you know what? This is a fantastic and very competitive phone even at this price point, and for everything Google offers here, I don't think it's a bad deal at all. But that's just me. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the Pixel 9 Pro XL, whether Google's gone from strength to strength with this new model, or whether you wanted to see something a little bit different this time around. We're going to keep covering this phone as it gets more updates going into 2025 and beyond, so stick with us and subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss our long-term coverage. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.